I never thought I'd see the day when my own helicopter would become the center of neighborhood drama. But living under the rule of a strict HOA, anything unusual quickly becomes a scandal. And nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare me for what happened when Karen from down the street saw my helicopter parked in my own backyard. The moment Karen's eyes locked on that helicopter, it was like a storm had been unleashed. Her jaw dropped, her phone flew into her hand, and she began pacing like a soldier on duty. You'd think she had just spotted an alien spaceship landing in the middle of suburbia. But no, it was my helicopter, sitting quietly, minding its own business in my backyard. Here's the thing. Most people in the neighborhood already thought my hobbies were strange. While some folks collected stamps or garden gnomes, I liked to fly. Helicopters had been my passion for years. I had worked, saved, and finally, after years of effort, bought one for myself. It wasn't brand new, but it was mine and it was legal. Every license, every document, every safety check was in place. I had dreamed of this moment. But what I didn't dream of was facing the wrath of Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed eyes and ears of the HOA. If you left your trash can out too long, she reported it. If your grass grew 1 inch too high, she documented it. If your Christmas lights weren't taken down by January 1st, she threatened fines. To say she lived for the HOA rulebook would be an understatement. And when she saw my helicopter, her mind didn't go to, wow, that's cool. No, her mind went straight to crime scene. I heard her yelling on the phone. Words like stolen, danger, and illegal aircraft echoed across the street. She pointed at my yard like she had uncovered the crime of the century. My other neighbors peeked out their windows, curious, confused, and maybe even entertained. Some of them waved to me awkwardly as if to say, sorry, but we're not getting involved in this one. And here's the part that made it worse. Instead of coming over to ask me directly, Karen decided she was going to call everyone she could. She didn't just call the HOA president. She called the police. She called security. She even called her sister, loudly telling her she was about to save the entire neighborhood from a stolen military helicopter. My heart sank, not because I was guilty of anything, but because I knew what was about to happen. When Karen made a scene, it never stayed small. It always exploded into a circus. And now, the circus was setting up right in my backyard. At first, I tried to ignore her. I thought maybe she'd calm down. Maybe once she realized everything was legal, she'd stop. But Karen wasn't built that way. She thrived on drama. She fed on conflict. And now, she had locked her sights on me. Minutes later, I saw flashing lights coming down the street. Police cars. 2 of them. My stomach twisted. I knew I had nothing to hide, but the idea of officers being told I had stolen an aircraft was enough to make anyone sweat. Karen ran toward them like a hero returning from battle. She waved her arms and shouted, "That's the one! That's the stolen helicopter." The officers looked at her, then at me, then at the helicopter. Their expressions were caught somewhere between confusion and disbelief. One officer approached me cautiously, hand resting on his belt. "Sir," he said slowly, "we got a report of a stolen helicopter." I almost laughed, but the seriousness in his voice stopped me. I shook my head, pulled out my license, registration, and every bit of paperwork I had prepared for moments like this. I handed them over calmly. "This is mine," I said. "I worked hard for it. Everything is legal. I can explain." The officer studied the papers. His partner walked around the helicopter, inspecting it like it might suddenly sprout weapons. Meanwhile, Karen kept shouting, "He's lying. There's no way he owns that. People like him don't just buy helicopters. It has to be stolen." Her voice was sharp, piercing, almost desperate. The more the officers ignored her, the louder she became. And the more she spoke, the more my neighbors gathered outside, whispering, laughing, and filming the entire scene on their phones. Now, I could have exploded. I could have shouted back. But instead, I took a deep breath. I wanted the truth to speak louder than her accusations. I knew the papers in the officer's hands carried more weight than Karen's screams. And slowly, I watched the shift happen. The officer handed my paperwork back. "Everything checks out," he said firmly. "You're clear to go." Karen's face froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like she had just lost a battle. She thought she was destined to win. For once, the queen of complaints had no power. But the story didn't end there. Because with Karen, it never ends. The very next day, a letter appeared in my mailbox. A formal HOA violation notice. Apparently, according to Karen, helicopters counted as unapproved structures. She argued that it disrupted the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. I couldn't believe it. A helicopter was not a shed. It wasn't a garage. It wasn't some ugly construction. It was a machine parked in my own yard, fully legal. Yet here I was, staring at a piece of paper threatening fines unless I removed it. I could feel my blood boiling. I had worked for years to achieve this dream. I had followed every law, every rule that actually mattered. And now, because one neighbor decided she didn't like it, I was being treated like a criminal. I called the HOA president. He sighed, clearly tired of Karen's antics, and admitted she had pushed for the violation. He confessed that, technically, nothing in the HOA rules specifically banned helicopters, but Karen had convinced the board to review the issue. That was her strategy. If the rules didn't exist, she would invent them. At that moment, I knew this wasn't just about a helicopter. It was about control. Karen couldn't stand the idea that someone in the neighborhood had something unique, something special, something she couldn't control. To her, my helicopter wasn't just a machine. It was a threat to her little empire of rules. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the rules of my life. I was ready to fight. And here's where the story takes a twist you won't believe. Because the more Karen pushed, the more I discovered just how far she was willing to go. But that's something I'll tell you in the next section. I thought the storm was over after the police left my house. I thought the paperwork had cleared everything up and Karen would finally back down. But if I learned one thing living in that neighborhood, it's this. Karen never quits. She doesn't just drop a fight. She reloads. The next morning, I woke up to find 3 of my neighbors gathered at the edge of my driveway. They weren't there to chat or admire the helicopter. They were holding HOA pamphlets, whispering nervously, and one of them finally spoke up. "Hey, we heard Karen is calling for an emergency HOA meeting. She wants everyone to vote on banning helicopters in the neighborhood." I stared at them, shocked. "You're kidding, right? You can't just make up new rules overnight." But no one laughed. Their eyes told me this wasn't a joke. Karen had already started her campaign. She was knocking on doors, spinning wild stories, saying things like, "The helicopter could crash into your house," or "What if it explodes near the playground?" She even told one family their kids would never be safe playing outside again. And here's the part that stunned the most. Some neighbors actually believed her. It didn't matter that I had every license. It didn't matter that helicopters are safer than half the things people ride every day. Karen had planted seeds of fear, and fear grows fast in a quiet neighborhood. By that evening, my phone buzzed with an official notice. The HOA board was scheduling a vote. The language was clear. The board would decide whether to classify helicopters as unapproved vehicles, subject to fines and removal. I couldn't believe it. My dream, my passion, my years of hard work. Suddenly all was on the line, because one neighbor couldn't mind her own business. I sat there, staring at the notice, anger boiling in my chest. But then I realized something. If Karen could rally people with fear, maybe I could rally them with truth. Maybe I could show them my side of the story. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to sit back and let her tear my life apart. I was going to fight back. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with facts, calmness, and proof. The day of the meeting came faster than I expected. The community center was packed. Karen sat in the front row, arms crossed, smug smile glued to her face. She looked like she had already won. The HOA president called the meeting to order, and Karen immediately jumped up. She launched into her speech, filled with fear and drama. She pointed at me like I was the villain of a movie. "This helicopter is a danger to us all," she shouted. It doesn't belong here. We can't live under the shadow of a stolen, dangerous machine. Her words filled the room like smoke, choking out reason. Some people clapped. Some nodded. And for a second, I felt like maybe I had already lost. But then it was my turn. I stood up slowly, walked to the front, and looked around the room. I didn't start with anger. I didn't start with blame. I started with something else. I know this looks unusual, I said. I know a helicopter isn't what you expect to see in a backyard. But let me tell you something. This helicopter isn't stolen. It's not dangerous. It's my dream. I worked years to buy it, and every single piece of paper proves it's legal. I'm not here to break rules. I'm here to live my life. I pulled out the paperwork and held it high. Licenses, registration, FAA approval, everything. I followed every law. I followed every rule that matters. But what I won't do is let one person's fear rewrite my future. If we start banning things just because someone doesn't like them, then what's next? Your boat? Your RV? Your kid's trampoline? Where does it end? The room went quiet. Karen's face turned red, but she didn't interrupt. Then I turned to the neighbors directly. Some of you know me. You've seen me mow my lawn, wave at you, help when I can. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a danger. I'm just someone who loves to fly. And I promise you this. I'll never use this helicopter in a way that risks your safety. That's not who I am. For the first time, I saw a doubt in their eyes. Not about me, but about Karen. The HOA board whispered among themselves. Finally, the president spoke. We've reviewed the documents. Everything is in order. There is no violation. And unless the rules are changed fairly, through a full process, we cannot punish someone for following the law. Karen jumped to her feet, shouting, "This isn't fair. You're all blind. He's going to destroy this neighborhood." But her voice cracked. Her power was slipping. Neighbors began to murmur, and then one by one, people stood up, not for her, but for me. "I think it's pretty cool," one man said. "My kids love it," another added. "As long as it's safe, I don't see the problem," a woman said. Karen's face twisted, her arms flailed, but the tide had turned. For the first time, her grip on the neighborhood was slipping through her fingers. The board announced a decision. No violation, no fines, no forced removal. My helicopter stayed. Relief washed over me like a wave. I had won, not just against Karen, but against fear. And as I walked out of that meeting, I felt something else too. Respect. Neighbors who once whispered behind curtains now smiled and waved. Some even asked questions about the helicopter. Kids wanted to see it up close. Families wanted pictures. Suddenly, the machine that Karen had called stolen had become the pride of the neighborhood. Karen, of course, didn't disappear. She still muttered, still complained, still plotted. But everyone knew the truth now. Her power was gone, and my dream was alive. That night, as I stood in my yard, looking at the helicopter gleaming under the moonlight, I thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the shouting, the humiliation, and then the victory. I realized something important. People like Karen will always exist. They'll always try to tear down what they don't understand. But as long as you stand firm, as long as you know your truth and fight for it, no amount of noise can take it away from you. And that's the lesson I carry to this day. My helicopter isn't just a machine. It's a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the battles we fight in our own backyards can teach us more about courage, patience, and strength than anything else. So when I see Karen glaring from across the street, I don't get angry anymore. I just smile, because I know the helicopter is still there, still mine, still soaring above every complaint she can throw. And every time its blades cut through the sky, they carry a message loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Dreams aren't stolen, they're earned.